In my opinion, this was hands down one of the best episodes of the season and of the series. There was a lot that happened, and they alluded to a lot as well.
The Walking Dead, Season 4, Episode 13, Alone.
Well, hello, my brothers and sisters of the Dead Nerd Nation. I, as always, am Jim, here to bring you another review on the awesome and gruesome and terrifying and flashback-ridden tale of The Walking Dead. This particular episode, I'm just going to kind of dive right in over here. Forgive my absence of, I guess, really being able to project my voice. I'm getting over a sinus cold, a sinus infection. I've been down and out for about four or 5 days now. But I'm trying to get this one out there because I really enjoyed the episode. Now, last week's episode, of course, saw us focus primarily, really the entire episode was on Daryl and Beth and their relationship. And some people thought it was slow. Some people thought it was good for the development of the characters. Ultimately, the thing that I liked about it is that this week it then segued into this week's episode, which was split between the groups of Daryl and Beth and Maggie, Sasha, and Bob. And the only thing that I'm a little bit irritated about, that I wish that was a little bit different, is that there's so many different groups now that, now it's been 2-3 weeks since, it's been a month since we've seen Tyrese in the gang, and Carol and all the kids that he's got saddled with. It's been a few weeks since we've seen Rick and Michonne and whatnot. So for me, it gets a little bit frustrating because some of the characters that you know and that you love, and there's only 16 episodes in a season, and when you're only seeing characters that you like every 3 or 4 episodes, for some that can be a real downer. So this episode, though, was entitled Alone, and the whole theme and premise of it is that, the end of the world may come, right? And how will you act if the laws of society aren't there? And how will you act if there's no moral boundaries put in place? Will the cream of the crop rise to the top, or will it be the evil ones, the ones that have a hurtful nature in them that will wind up surviving just because they're the ones that will push it to the extreme, that will kill somebody without a second thought. And all that kind of goes out the window because regardless of whether your moral compass points north or south or wherever, being alone in this type of thing, they show, is the most terrible, terrifying thing ever. And they did a great job by starting out the episode with Bob, a character that a lot of people, myself included, have not really felt very trustworthy about this whole season. And he hasn't gotten a lot of development. And he starts out, the show starts out, and it took me a couple minutes to realize that it was actually a flashback to when Daryl met him on the side of the road. But it starts out, and Bob's just walking. He's walking by himself. And they have this great music playing in the background. It's kind of like this montage of him walking day after day, and where he has to go and camp, and where he has to, try to hole up. One night he sleeps on top of like a taller truck, and there's like a flat a box truck, and he's sleeping on top of it, and there's zombies, on the sides trying to pull up and get to him and everything. And you think about how hard it would be to survive being alone, having no one to talk to, and dodging all the perils of this world, So for me, that was really a great intro, and it set the whole tone of the episode, because as the episode wears on, we go back and forth between, of course, the two different groups, but the main focus that I'll start out with is obviously is the group of Sasha, Bob, and Maggie. Now, Maggie is hell-bent on trying to find Glenn no matter what. And as her and Bob and Sasha wander around through the woods, there's a great scene where there's a lot of fog and mist, and they have to take down a bunch of walkers hand to hand. It even looks like Bob gets bit at one point, but he actually got bit on the bandage that was already covered up his bullet wound from the mid-season finale. So there was a little bit of a close call there. But nonetheless, though, it was actually a very good scene. There was a lot of, for those of you that come to watch the show to see all the zombie kills, there was a number of them there at the beginning. But then really the whole point of them and the whole point of this show is about characters being alone and how tough it would be. So as they go and progress, they wind up finding and getting on the train tracks that we know that, of course, Tyrese and the gang are on their way to this Terminus. We know that Carl and Michonne and Rick found that a few episodes ago and are on their way. With all these signs that are posted on these different train tracks converging at this area, this sanctuary, this Terminus. So she's like, well, I'm going to go there. I know Glenn will be there. If he was alive, he'd go there. And Sasha is kind of in this mode where she just doesn't want to face anything, it seems like. She's scared, she's nervous, whatever. But she's like, I don't want to go. And what winds up happening eventually is that Sasha and Bob wake up the next morning in their little camp, and Maggie must have overheard them talking the day before about how they were thinking about leaving and this and that. And Maggie just left them a note and said, "Don't worry about it. Good luck to you, but I have to go. This is what I have to do." So Maggie is then off alone, and as she's on her way to Terminus, she's going and gutting zombies every time she finds one of these Terminus signs, and goes and writes on there in the zombie's blood. Glenn, it's Maggie, I'll meet you in Terminus type of thing, So this goes on back and forth for the whole show, and what winds up happening is then Bob and Sasha wake up the next morning, and they're trying to catch up now to Maggie, but Bob is still wounded. And the whole thing about it is Bob goes and explains to Sasha how terrible it is being alone. He's been with 2 groups before, both of which he wound up being the last survivor. And when the prison wound up just going to shit and everything else, this guy is just happier than a pig in shit, man. I just kept thinking of that song, Happy, because he's just got this big old smile on his face. And it's because the shit hit the fan, and this time he has a group. He still has people that he's with. He has a family, so to speak, He doesn't have to be alone again, and I think that was when you saw him at the beginning. I mean, this guy was troubled. He was obviously an alcoholic before. He was drinking NyQuil, whatever. And basically just to try to silence the sound of probably the zombies around him and the sound of his own voices in his head, because he had nobody to converse with, So the episode does a great job of showing you what it is like to be just kind of destitute, desolate, out in the middle of nowhere, alone, and especially in this type of world, alone is just your time is short if you're alone, So I really liked that. I enjoyed it. So they wind up separating, of course, and then Bob and Sasha get to a point where they get into this town, and Sasha's going to go and she's going to hole up in this building and wants Bob to come with her. And Bob basically, he kisses her, gets himself a little loving. Got to have some loving in the apocalypse. And then he basically says, "Listen, no, I gotta take off, And I think he feels like Sasha would come after him anyway. So he goes off on ahead. And then Sasha, while she's up in this building looking for, good spots and everything else, putting her shit down and kind of looking to hole up and defend it, she goes and winds up seeing Maggie with some zombies laying on top of her, I guess a dead one or something laying down there, and then they wind up having this other great action scene where she comes out and she's got this spear and Maggie's got this sign, and they wind up just taking out a horde of zombies, a whole bunch of them anyway, which was pretty cool. And the only reason that I can think of that Maggie was probably lying there was that, maybe she went to gut or kill one of these zombies, what she thought was a straggler, to go and leave another message in blood for Glenn, but she maybe alerted some other ones to her presence and couldn't take them all out, didn't have the weapons for it or whatever, so just maybe pulled a body on top of her to hope they would not see her, smell her, or whatever, But anyway, that's their whole story, and then the show winds up ending, or the episode winds up ending, of course, with them meeting up with Bob again. And then the other half of the episode, and again, this goes back and forth, is really the Daryl and Beth show. Daryl and Beth, after their little, burning down the house and flicking off, and F you to the world last week, and their little development that they had there, they're kind of hanging out, and they're a little bit chummy, and at one point, you wind up seeing this zombie. Beth winds up, as she goes towards it, the zombie looks like it's pinned down, half alive. She winds up getting her foot or ankle twisted or caught in this trap or whatever, so immediately I was thinking of something with these hunters, But nonetheless, so she's limping, she's hobbled now. They wind up coming upon this, it looks like a funeral home, and they go inside, and there's still preserved bodies, and the place is creepy because it's been a couple years since the zombie apocalypse, but there's food stacked neatly in the pantry, there's no dust on anything, everything's clean. Beth gets a chance to sing again and play the piano. They go downstairs, there's a body laying there, and again, it's like a funeral home, and the body's got all this makeup and everything, like it's all done up ready for its funeral. So anyway, that this has got to be some kind of trap, and as they wind up spending some time there, and then it's later on in the evening, and they've set up some things, they set up these different things with strings, and they put stuff on there to when zombies would come in contact with the strings and the different metal objects that are on, they'll clang together, and of course be like an early warning system, right? So they wind up hearing something, they think it's going to be at the front door, and it turns out he opens the door, it's this one-eyed dog, really cute dog. Dog goes running off, though, and so Daryl's like, all right, closes the door back up, and him and Beth, they're hanging out, and they're eating some pig's feet, and they're munching up later on. And then all of a sudden, they hear the rattling again, and they figure it's the dog coming back. And Daryl goes and just doesn't even go to check the door, he just opens it, and there's a dozen zombies at the door, maybe more, right? So Beth is hobbling through the house, Daryl's like, oh, I'll meet you out by the road, get your stuff, and he's trying to get them all to go after him. And it was a really nice action scene because he winds up cornering himself downstairs in the edge of the, or in the part where they, in the funeral home where they actually, do the makeup and everything like that in the basement. And he's cornered in this room, and these things are flooding down the stairs and coming against him, and he pulls the table in front of him and starts using like a scalpel and like a giant syringe and like stabbing these things. Somehow weasels out and crawls out from under him, because at this point he'd run out of crossbow bolts, or maybe he had very few left. I don't know. He didn't have time to reload it, and then has to fight his way back up the stairs, taking out a couple of these things, all to go and run outside. And he runs outside by the road, and what do we see but Beth's backpack and nothing, no Beth. He looks down the road about 100 feet, 100 yards, whatever it is, and he sees the ass end of, I don't know, looks like maybe a Cadillac, or maybe the back end of a hearse. I don't know. I saw a cross swinging in the window, though. So Beth is probably with this person and has probably been kidnapped. And that's not even the whole crux of the episode here. I've heard things about, and I haven't read the comics, but I've heard that people were alluding to this Father Gabriel, that I don't know if he's an antagonist or if he's good or bad, but that he may have Beth. Maybe the whole thing was a trap to begin with. Maybe he lured the zombies to the door and whatnot so he could go and flush them out and see who was holed up in his house. I don't know. But the bottom line is that then this is the alone part again. Daryl is walking around, and he's, just walking through the night into the next day. He's sitting in the middle of the road, just sitting there with his crossbow, looking like he wants to put a bullet in his head, right? And all of a sudden, a bunch of guys go and kind of step up around him like they're going to start some shit. First guy that goes to reach for him, Daryl jacks up, hits him or whatever, and then puts his crossbow right to his face. And who do we see this guy is? None other than part of the gang of freaking misfits that we saw a few episodes ago when Rick was hiding under the bed. And we actually see the guy that had gotten choked out, that was just unconscious and not dead, that I felt like was going to come back and haunt him in some way, shape, or form. We see him. We see the guy that was sitting out on the porch that had the kind of beard and mustache and the longer grayish hair, introduces himself as Joe. And I guess he's the leader of this ragtag group of ding-dongs. And this guy goes and he says, well, and he talks Daryl down, and he's like, you're going to shoot me, and then these guys are going to shoot you dead, and this and that. And he's like, why go and waste all that anger and hatred? Why hurt when you can hurt others, or something like that? Why hurt me when you could hurt others? Something along those lines. Or why do that and hurt yourself when you could hurt others? And he kind of has this sinister smile. So Daryl, at least temporarily, is going with these numbnuts. And I think this is all going to wrap up, a few episodes down the road in the season finale is my prediction of that one, because Daryl's going to go with them. And I think that they're probably hunting Rick and Michonne now, because they knew that there was a woman there. They were waiting for her to come back because they were going to rape her and everything else. And obviously they must have known about Rick now, because the guy that got up that saw him under the bed was like, yeah, when Bobby was choking me out for the bed, I saw this man under the bed. And they figure, hey, he's the one who killed the guy in the bathroom, who came back and maybe killed somebody else. So I think these guys might be on the hunt on the way towards Terminus, or at least tracking Rick and Michonne and them. So, and it's not going to be neat to see when Daryl figures that all out and all hell breaks loose. But all in all, it was a very cool episode. It was there was a lot of action in it. There was a lot of characters that I felt like developed and moved forward. I really like the character of Bob, because whether you like him or trust him or not, I kind of feel his pain, I was used to growing up in a family with a lot of kids. I'm the oldest of 6. And then even when I wound up moving out, it was with my fiance, and then became my wife. And there was a period where her and I were separated for a while, and I was living in a condo by myself. And we didn't have any kids or anything yet. And it sucked being alone every night. I just wasn't used to it, because I had been used to being around people all the time, So I definitely can just a little bit feel that kind of that loneliness and desolation. And I do. I like the character now. I really enjoyed just everything. And then at the end of the episode, we get this cool little teaser for next week's episode, or maybe the week after that, the way they're doing these, where Glenn goes and actually comes upon one of the signs for Terminus, and the blood signs of Maggie being on her way there. So we know that now everybody, for the most part, is converging at Terminus, except for Daryl and Beth. We don't know exactly what they're doing, but I'm assuming that Daryl with these gang of misfits, that they're probably going after Rick and them, who are heading towards Terminus. We know Tyrese and the gang are headed towards Terminus, Tyrese and Carol and all the kids. And then, of course, we know that, Beth has been captured and what have you, but I don't know how this all plays into it. But then we know, too, that, like I said, just basically everybody that, Glenn and Abraham and that bunch are going as well. So very, very fun episode. Very cool, very enjoyable. And like I said, the only thing that I can really say that I'd like to see is, I just like to see more groups in an episode. I feel like you can easily fit 2 or 3 groups, or follow 2 or 3 groups in an episode. And when you got 5 or 6 or 7 as they're breaking apart, it's not that hard to do, really. I mean, because then you keep the audience retention. Obviously, you keep their attention because now I don't have to wait a month in between seeing my favorite character. So, just my opinion, my 2 cents. My episode question though is, brothers and sisters, what are your thoughts on this this group of individuals, these misfits that Daryl ran into? What are your thoughts on them? Do you think that they're in the process of trying to hunt down Rick now for killing one of their own and kind of duping them and everything else? Leave your answer to that question in the comments down below. Feel free to hit the thumbs up, the like button if you should think that I deserve it, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. We will look forward to catching all of you in the next one, Nation. Hey there, brothers and sisters. Remember to follow me over on Twitter and the Facebook as well.